So I guess that everyone can hear me. So we structured the webinar in a way that you understand the context of the Connecting Europe facility and where the building blocks come from. The focus will be on the generic side of the building blocks, and what I will start by doing is to explain the origin of the building blocks and the funding program that is associated with them. So to those that are really interested in implementing eDelivery, I believe that this will be a good way to get familiar with the funding opportunities that we offer, and also to understand the political context. So let me start. Next slide. Yes. So the Connecting Europe facility is a funding program of the European Commission, of the European Union, that funds transport, projects, energy, and telecom. It's overall 33 billion euro investment during the period of 2014 to 2020. We are part of the telecom family of projects. There we have two types of investments, one on what we call digital service infrastructures, DSIs, and broadband. So the broadband part is actually quite limited, and the main investment, around 1 billion, is on the digital service infrastructures. So the main message here is that the Connecting Europe facility is a funding program that funds digital projects across the EU, but it's not only digital or telecom. It's also transport and energy. And if you actually go and look for CEF, you might find a number of other projects and initiatives around the transport and energy sectors. And there we have quite some synergies at the digital level, and they also reuse our building blocks. So the funding program started in 2014 and will continue in 2020. And once we have the new multi-annual financing framework, there will be a continuity of the program in another shape, but this is currently in discussion, and there will be news soon. So looking then more into detail on what are these digital service infrastructures, we mainly have two ideas. So when we look at the digital projects that are being funded by the Connecting Europe facility, we see that there are two main types. So we help the different sectors to become more digital. That can be, for example, the health sector, can be the justice sector, the social security domain, e-procurement. All of these sectors, they are becoming digital and they require funding, and the Connecting Europe facility provides the funding required for them to carry on their projects. Most of them are linked to EU legislation, being a new regulation or a directive. Now, what happens is that all these different sectors, when they become digital, they have similar needs. They have similar, let's say, challenges. They have similar problems to solve. And this is why in all of them, we try to have a minimal common core, and that's what we call the building blocks. So independently of the regulation or directive that is being put in place, we believe that there are elements that are recurrent in all of them. So if we think about a citizen authentifying to a portal, he will always need to do it in a secure way, and therefore these projects, they might need eID. If I'm sending an official document to a public administration, I might need to sign it. So this is why we have the signature building block. The sending might also need to be a secure channel so that I'm sure that there will be no problems and that my information will not be modified on its way to the receiver. So this is why we have eDelivery. As you know, we have 23 different languages in the Union. We provide the translation building block. If you do invoice, then we have the invoicing building block, and finally we have the cybersecurity, as we need a secure environment to ensure that all these transactions are carried out in a secure way. So what does this mean? It means that since 2014, we have been working with various different sectors, helping them to become digital and helping them to reuse the building blocks. And we do this in two main, let's say, ways. Most of these projects have a set of central services that are provided by the European Commission. So we help our colleagues in the policy DGs to set those portals up. So we are currently working with NR, so DG Energy, to, for example, enable the EPREL directive regulation, to go live. And we do this with all the other policy DGs. Now, in addition to this, we also have grants, and the grants can be provided both to public and private entities. So it means that we don't stop at the EU level. The funding program can also be used by the member states themselves or even by private entities to put in place the building blocks. One important idea here is that these building blocks, this funding program, is always looking at cross-border use. It's always looking at digital services by digital means, meaning that we are putting in place automated processes that can be carried out digitally. They must have sufficient maturity. They must contribute to EU policies. And once they are in place, they have to become sustainable. So all these projects will, in the end, create an ecosystem where we have this minimal common core being the building blocks, and then we will have multiple services helping citizens and businesses to do things that in the past they would require paper forms, or they would require, sending post, meaning, the typical, I will send my post to a public administration, wait a week, and then see if they reply. So all this will be automated, and the building blocks will be essential elements to make all this possible, independently of the business domain that we are talking about. So what we want is that all the different sectors, all the different regulations and directives use the building blocks as much as possible to put their services in place. And we are being quite successful in doing this. So if we look at the big picture, what you have already today is a number of portals that are online, meaning that they are supporting EU policies and they are live. They can be used by you even today. I give you a couple of examples. For example, the eJustice portal, where if you are, you can, for example, find a lawyer. You can find also any EU company through a simple search, and you can, let's say, use the eJustice portal for a number of cross-border procedures that in the past you would eventually even need to travel to do exactly the same. We have the online dispute resolution portal, which is also online. In case you buy any good or service online and something goes wrong, you can start a dispute through this portal. We have the open data portal that helps you to find data sets in multiple portals distributed around Europe. We have the business registers information system or interconnection system that also relies on the same portal as the justice one that I mentioned in the very beginning. And for example, we have the social security portals that are being put in place to help you and us that have worked in different member states to, for example, merge pension funds and to do a number of paper procedures online. It's a very large project in the social security domain that is being carried out by the DG Employment, our colleagues here in Brussels. What is interesting and what you don't see, of course, is that all of them have common elements. So all of these portals, in a way or another, use our building blocks. So in most of them, you are able to use your eID to authenticate. When a signature is required, and mostly in the justice domain this happens, you will be able to use e-signature. When the documents flow from these portals to the member state, eDelivery is being used to ensure that the sending is done in a secure way. In case there is electronic invoicing, as I mentioned, we have the electronic invoicing building block, and we can also change languages using the translation building block. I think someone just unmuted the microphone. Ines, can you please mute the participant? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So then, of course, even though we have all the portals at EU level, as I mentioned, they communicate with the member states and they require the member states to participate and to join. And there, this is where we have the grants. And the grants are up to 75% of eligible costs. They are given in a competitive format, and I will explain what that means later. And that helps, of course, both the private and public entities participating in these different projects to get on board and basically do it at a lower cost. So that's really the objective, is to reduce the costs and to ensure that we accelerate this transformation that is supporting the creation of a digital single market. That is our overarching policy. So I hope that at this point in time, you understand that the Connecting Europe facility is helping different policy domains to put online their services. Their services many times imply a portal that is hosted here typically by the Commission and is connected then to the member states, who might have also other portals. So these portals might all be interconnected. And we have building blocks that help to keep some sort of harmonization across these different portals and to ensure the flow of information between EU level and national level. So all this is really happening as we speak. And if you go online, you can actually use already most of these services today. And I really invite you to go and have a look. So if we continue, what is also interesting for you to know is that the building blocks have not been decided by the Commission in a closed room. They have been identified by the member states themselves. So a number of large-scale pilots have been funded by different funding programs, and they all identified the same building blocks as being required to solve their problems, to put their services online. So this is how we got to the current set of building blocks. They are really the recurrent needs of real users, of citizens and businesses that are required to use these different services. And in parallel, there was an initiative called EIDAS, which led to the EIDAS regulation that created the legal framework for example, mutual authentication of EIDs, for the enlargement of the signature directive that now becomes actually cross-sectorial, and in the past it was attached to a specific policy domain. We have the link between our eDelivery building block and the electronic registered delivery service of EIDAS. That is a sort of registered post. So on paper, you go and you ask for an acknowledgement of receipt. In eDelivery, this is done digitally, so much faster and at the same time in a much secure way. We have the e-invoicing directive that is also creating the legal framework for e-invoicing. E-translation has less of a binding regulation, but of course, multilingualism is already foreseen since the Treaty of Rome. So we can also say that it falls within the broad scope of EU law. Yeah. So before I end this section of the webinar, which is the most generic part, I would like to draw your attention to the grants. We have had today the info session on the grants that opened early May, so on the 3rd of May, and there we have eDelivery. So in case you are interested to use the eDelivery building block, meaning to use an access point that supports the AS4 standard, currently there is a call that is open to which you can send an application, and supports the creation. Sorry, Ines, can you mute someone? Has yes. Okay, that can support you to deploy eDelivery access point. That can also support you to upgrade your solution to AS4, so that is also foreseen. And then it will also support you for 1 year of operations. So I think it's quite an interesting financial incentive and support. And you can actually create a consortium. So you don't need to do it individually. You can create a consortium and send your application, which will then be, of course, evaluated by the agency that is supporting the Commission in the whole process. That is the INEA agency. And we will have the link. I think we have the link already here and also later, where you will have the criteria that you will be judged against. So you need to always consider the cross-border element, of course, the support to EU policy, the fact that you have a sustainability plan in mind, and that, of course, this is to accelerate the creation of EU-wide service. And I believe that you have good chances to be selected, as many other projects have already been in the past. And you can actually go on the INEA website and consult the kind of projects that are currently being carried out through this funding mechanism. So I think it can be quite interesting for you to have a look. I know that not all of you will go for the eDelivery option, as there will be an alternative to do this through a portal. So in case you really know that eDelivery is the option that you will take, then I believe that this is an opportunity until September for you to try to get funding. And in case you need more information, we will be here to answer any questions. As I said, this is something that is happening as we speak. It's really happening in, I would say, an accelerated speed. And we are currently connecting a number of success stories that show how the building blocks can help the different policy domains get their services online. And all of them are on our portal, that is the CEF digital portal. So I really invite you to go and have a look, as this can get you some inspiration. And to basically make things a bit more concrete, I will go through two examples of how the eDelivery building block is being used. So as I said, to recap, eDelivery is not attached to any sector or policy domain. It can transport any type of document in a secure way over the internet. And to do this, we use the AS4 standard, and we will provide you with detailed information about why the AS4 standard the choice to carry out this use case of a neutral transport mechanism that can, in a secure way, ensure that the information goes from the original sender to the final recipient, keeping, of course, the information intact. So when you receive the information, you are sure that it was not modified on its way. Once it gets to the final recipient, there will be an acknowledgement of receipt sent to the original sender to confirm that the information is now on the other side, and you will know immediately that you have conveyed the document in an official way to the, in this case, European Commission. Yes.
One simple question, or one short question, please. I've been invited to this webinar because I shall transfer some data related to the EU energy label to the European Union. And will this topic also will be discussed today, or I'm in the wrong, maybe in the wrong session?
Well, it really depends. So, as I explained in the beginning, and I think Ines was also clear on this, is that this webinar is focusing on the eDelivery building block, meaning that to those that are interested in deploying an AS4 access point, then I think this webinar is of value. If you're not interested to do it using the AS4 access point and eventually using the website, then it means that eventually you don't need to know all this.
Okay.
So I don't know in which camp are you at this point in time, but I hope that it was clear that what we would do today is actually to explain the delivery building block in quite great detail, starting really from the context, which I already did.
For the actual community.
Yes.
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Who are you?
I'm Dominic Fleckbert. I'm from Lighting Europe, and here we as well, and we have sent it as well to our members. I see that several members joined, and in the invitation that we have received from the European Commission, it indeed says the webinar is targeted to suppliers in the context of the European Product Registry for Energy Labeling project, and aims to provide information about eDelivery and its specifications, because eDelivery is an aspect that will be of the energy labeling database that have, and we have had several questions about it together with the several other stakeholders. And the invitation that we received for this webinar implied that it would cover those questions.
That's perfect. So you then basically confirm that it makes sense what we are presenting, right?
Okay, good. Thank you for confirming.
Yes. So exactly, as we know that eDelivery will be used to convey the information to the EPREL database. So you need to get the information to be stored there. One way of doing that is through the delivery building block. We were asked by our colleagues to provide information about the building block, and we thought that it would be of value for you to know that the building block is actually used by many other projects in the context of the Connecting Europe facility, and that, of course, you can receive funding to implement the building block for the purposes of EPREL. And this is what I've been trying to explain. As you will see, the building block is already used in many different use cases, and fundamentally it's always the same, well, let's say, workflow as we showed here. You will need an eDelivery access point in case you convey, your report or any other type of document. So you need an AS4 compliant access point, and what that access point will do is basically to validate and compress the information that you will transmit to the EPREL database. It will sign and encrypt that message, and then it will convey it through HTTPS to the access point of the European Commission. Typically, like, a postman would do with normal post. And it's nothing but that. So it's basically an access point that is a sort of box where you put the information, and that will convey it securely to the European Commission using the AS4 messaging protocol that works on top of the internet using the HTTP protocol. So all using very well-known technologies, and we will explain those in more detail in the next section. Is this now clear to everyone? Are there more questions about why are we presenting eDelivery, or is this of interest to me? Are we all on board? Yeah.
Hello, this is
Yes.
Paolo from the European Heating Industry Association.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for holding the webinar. Yes, I think it's clear that we're moving towards the area of the webinar that is perhaps of more interest for member companies, because or for suppliers who will have to provide the data. Perhaps you're going to come to this point later, but you've mentioned that AS4 is a well-known technology or well-known protocol. I have actually received several feedback in the sense that actually it's quite a new one, and not very well known by many players, who are also wondering why other protocols, such as, for example, AS2, are not used. I don't know if this is something that you will address at a later stage. If so, you will give a reply to my question. Thanks.
Okay, so this is good that we have all these interactions, because there are many people connected, and of course, we don't see you, so I don't know the reaction to what I'm presenting. But this is why we started with the context. So maybe, of course, you connect, you don't know what is going to be presented, and all of a sudden there are a number of new concepts being thrown at you. So it's normal that you have to adjust and to take a bit of time to understand what's going on. But actually, the slide that I was presenting, explaining the origin and the selection of the building blocks, also partially answers the question that you asked, meaning that the fact that AS4 was chosen as the messaging protocol of eDelivery, of the building block that we call eDelivery, was not a choice of the European Commission. It was actually a choice, as I explained, of the member states that have exactly this need of exchanging information in a secure way over the internet. So they analyzed different protocols, and they came to the conclusion, and one of the alternatives was indeed AS2, and we will go to the technical presentation right after. One of the alternatives was indeed AS2, but AS2 has several limitations when it comes to security. And this is why, given the fact that more and more what we see is that we have great concerns in terms of cyber security, that we needed something that was extremely secure and able to ensure that the information would definitely not be modified on its way to the final receiver. And there are different levels of encryption that are used to ensure that when, for example, you will have a middleman attack eventually, that the information is still encrypted, not at just the protocol level, but also at the envelope level. So what I'm trying to explain is that the building blocks were selected by the member states, and once there was enough consensus that this was the way to move forward, the Connecting Europe facility provides now the funding instrument to ensure its deployment throughout the different projects, as I mentioned. So we will go to the technical details, but that question was answered by the member states, and this is why today the Commission promotes AS4. And I guess that we will be able to provide more detailed information about the protocol through the presentation of Tim. Is this partially answering the question?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thanks for this part of reply, and then I look forward to hearing also the rest and the more technical specifications.
Yes, we will go there in a minute. I would like to, of course, also excuse myself if, let's say, we come with you know, a very conceptual presentation in the very beginning, but we believe that the context is also important, because what is happening actually is that there are two different, I would say, initiatives coming together and collaborating. So we are currently collaborating with our colleagues of the EPREL project that are using the building blocks coming from the Connecting Europe facility, that is this funding program that is in place since 2014, and that relies on work that was done by the member states and by the IADES regulation, and that today is deploying this eDelivery building block, meaning AS4, in many other policy domains, several others. So you are not a guinea pig of sorts that will use something exotic that no one uses. Actually, you are joining a very large community of users that is growing, and what we will also be able to eventually explain with PIM is that we work in the procurement domain, for example, with the PEPL network, that was a large-scale pilot started by the European Union, that then evolved into a community that is currently growing a lot because of the e-invoicing directive, and they relied on AS2, and now they're moving to AS4. and we are facilitating that transition from AS2 to AS4. So if you go to the grant that I just mentioned before, the grant on eDelivery, what you will see is that we fund also the transition from AS2 to AS4. And why are they doing this? Of course, because of the security concerns. If we look at the, let's say, cyber environment today and the cyber environment in the past, AS2 can no longer answer the challenges that we are currently facing. So we need a protocol that is more resilient and offers different levels of encryption, and at the same time is going to be able to evolve to even newer challenges that we know that are coming. So I think that we have to think about the future, and that the investment that we are doing today is future-proof. And that's exactly why we believe that eDelivery will be a good investment for the EPREL project. And in addition to that, there is also the funding that goes with it, and can provide you with opportunities to reduce your cost of entry. So I will give you one example then, because I think everyone is eager to know more about AS4, and that is really the, I would say, the main, I would say, concern that was voiced up to now. So I will be very brief here. So just to give you an example of where this protocol is being used. So 1 year ago, the business register interconnection system went live. This is a project of DG Justice, and there the objective was to enable citizens, but also businesses and public bodies, to go online and look for companies at European country. As you know, when following the financial crisis, there was a concern that, for example, companies that have branches in different member states, in case they happen to be, let's say, insolvent, the branches would not be struck off, and that there was also a need, in addition to look for the companies, that there was a need to exchange information between the member states to ensure that once a company, let's say, goes insolvent, all the branches are correctly handled in the other member states. So the BRIES does the two things. Does a search capability online, and does an exchange of information over the internet, which is quite confidential, to ensure that we have, let's say, all these elements better handled at EU level. And we're talking, of course, about a cross-border use case, because these branches are typically in other member states. To do this, they needed a secure information exchange mechanism, and they came to us, to the Building Blocks team, and asked us, can we use eDelivery, meaning the AS4 protocol, to ensure that the information about EU companies is exchanged between the member states and our database in a secure way, and at the same time, once the information arrives to us, we acknowledge the receipt in, let's say, automated fashion, and they selected AS4 to do this. So the challenges were, of course, a very tight legal deadline. They had very many different business rules per member state. They had different technologies in place with independent systems needing to now talk to one another. As I said, they selected eDelivery. They also looked into e-signature and eID, and this allowed them to very quickly put in place the solution that I'm showing you. So if you go to the European e-Justice portal, you are able to search for any EU company, and you will get the results from all these different databases across Europe that may have that company registered in their member state. So with one single search, you don't need anymore to, let's say, go and flip from a portal to the other. You can do it once. The information that is being exchanged between the business registers and the European Commission is facilitated by AS4. So all the member states have an AS4 access point in place, and they did it in actually quite a short time span. So we got an average of 3 months for completing the work. It's an average, of course. There are ones that did it faster, others that did it slower. But what it showed was that AS4 could be of use for all the different member states, independently and regardless of the technology that they had in place in their member state. They were able to do it in the short time span they had available, and the cost was also quite, I would say, low when I looked at the different figures I received from the member states, because we asked them, of course, how the deployment went and how much did they spend resources-wise and the actual cost. The solution that Breeze has in place is a very similar solution than the one that we expect for EPREL. So there will be a central database, there will be different access points talking to one another, but there will also be a portal that will enable the injection of information directly in the EPREL database. So that means that you will have two options, one that is more automated, eDelivery, with the AS4 access point, and then you will have one that is more manual through the website. And this is a pattern that we see over and over again. So we are doing the same with tobacco reporting, we are doing the same with the Justice Portal for many other use cases, and it's always the same type of pattern. When we need to exchange information, we want to do it in an automated way and in a secure way. We use AS4. However, if we are a very small player, we might want to use a simple portal and do it manually. So the two options are usually offered to the communities implementing these regulations and directives. So here's the feedback of the colleagues that implemented the eDelivery building block, and they were actually quite happy because we have a dedicated support team that is also able to travel in case major issues would occur. They are available to you through email. There is a knowledge base behind, so you can be in contact with them, but also look at the questions that were asked by all the other projects. There is a community that is supporting us in evolving very quickly the software that is provided, and we will try to explain this when we will get to our service offering. But just to show you here an example, a successful example of implementation, and of course, in the beginning, we understand things were not as easy as I'm stating now, but the final result is what matters, and we clearly see that AS4 was able to answer the challenges that they were facing. I will not go to the second, I would say, success story. I will let Pim go directly to the AS4 technical specifications, but before that, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes looking at a summary of what we just explained, and at the same time to questions that might already be there, so that Pim is ready to try to explain AS4 in the most efficient way. So to make a quick summary, you will continue to have your information system, whatever that information system is. It will continue to be there in case you use eDelivery. We call that corner 1 because in our documents, we try to split the flow of information in the 4 corners that are shown here on the screen. So your information system, the objective is to touch it the least as possible. Now, what you will need to do is to create an interface between your information system and the so-called AS4 access point, so that the information can be injected into the access point. And once the access point receives the information, typically AS4 will be a black box, because you will be using typically software that is already developed. We offer a sample implementation. We will explain this to you. So there is open source software that you can use, but you can also go to a commercial offering, and there are different vendors that are there to help you doing this. So when we will explain AS4, and Pim, please be clear about this, typically you will not need to know all the details of AS4. That will be encapsulated in the software that you will select. Once the information is on AS4, then it will transit through the internet and it will reach the commission. You will get an acknowledgement, and the information will then be registered in the EPREL database. So this is the use case. AS4 is basically the transport mechanism between your company and the EPREL database. It will typically be a black box, and I think, Pim, you need to be very clear about the different options when it comes to AS4 implementation. The objective of using this architecture is to impact the least as possible your current IT environment. So we don't want to disrupt that. We want to offer a solution that is of maximum security, but at the same time impacts the least your current IT environment. And the feedback we have gotten so far in the multiple projects that we have been carrying out is that we are able to do this with this technology. So any questions at this point in time? Okay, so if there are no questions, then I suggest that we go directly to Pim. Pim, I will be...
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, you are not Pim.
Hola. No, I'm not Pim. Sorry, this is Oscar Miralles. I'm the business analyst from EPREL project. I just want to tell the people that, yes, you are in the correct webinar. We at the DC Energy, we asked the guys from CEF to explain this building block because, as they said, EPREL will allow to upload models in two different ways. One will be manually using the website, and the other will be automatically from your system to our system, from system to system, from your backend with an automated process or whatever to send large amounts of models to our database. And for that, we will use the eDelivery building block. So that's why we organized this webinar, to explain you a bit more technically how you will be able to do it. So you are in the right place.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's reassuring. So without no delay then, let's jump into AS4. And I believe that's what everyone is waiting for. So Pim, just introduce yourself again maybe, and just ask us to change the slide, and Adrian will be doing this together with me.
Yes.